In a quiet town between green hills and golden fields, lived a woman named Grace. She was in her late 30s, with soft brown eyes that once sparkled with laughter and dreams. Life had once been kind to her. She lived in a small house with her husband Daniel and their 3 children. Daniel was a gentleman, a carpenter by trade, and known in the town for his kindness and honesty. But life, as it often does, had turned unexpectedly. Daniel fell ill. What began as fatigue soon became something far more serious. Doctors diagnosed him with a rare and aggressive disease. He could no longer work, and Grace found herself juggling multiple roles: nurse, mother, homemaker, and now, the family's sole provider. They sold many of their belongings to afford medication. The children stopped asking for toys or treats. Grace stopped buying anything for herself at all. Days turned into months. Daniel's condition worsened. Grace prayed. She prayed every night beside Daniel's hospital bed, with her fingers wrapped around his hand, whispering words only the heart understands. She prayed not just for healing, but for strength. Her smile never left her face, though her eyes told a different story to those who looked closely. Her neighbors admired her for her courage. "She's so strong," they would whisper. But strength, Grace knew, was not the absence of fear. It was choosing to carry on in spite of it. And then, one rainy morning, Daniel passed away. Grace didn't cry in front of the children. She hugged them tight, kissed their foreheads, and told them, "Daddy's gone to rest, but he loves us. Always." That night, when the house fell silent and even the rain paused its weeping, Grace went into their tiny kitchen, turned on the tap to cover the sound, and cried. The next few days were blurry. Funeral, paperwork, bills. But the real story begins after the mourning ended, when the world moved on. But Grace had to rebuild her life from the ashes. With barely any money and 3 children depending on her, she began working at a bakery owned by an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Hart. They gave her part-time work, and Grace would wake up at 4 a.m. to knead dough, bake loaves, and pack orders. She would return home by 8 to prepare breakfast and walk Liam and Sophie to school. She took little Ella with her wherever she could, and when she couldn't, her kind neighbor, Mrs. Finch, helped. Everywhere she went, Grace wore a smile. One day, Mrs. Hart asked her, "How do you keep smiling, Grace, after everything?" Grace looked at her hands, coated in flour, and said, "Because if I don't, my children will learn to give up, and I won't let that happen." Her children watched her. They saw her come home tired, sometimes with blisters on her fingers. But they also saw how she hummed songs while cooking, how she made up bedtime stories that made them giggle, and how she hugged them as if each day was a gift. Grace didn't deny her sadness. At night, when the kids slept, she would write letters to Daniel in a worn notebook. Today, Sophie lost her first tooth. She cried, but then she smiled when she found a coin under her pillow. "I made her believe in magic for one more day. I miss you." Liam won a prize in school for his drawing. It was a family picture and you were in it. He said, "Dad is still with us, just invisible." I cried in the bathroom after that. These letters were her way of healing. The turning point came a year later. One of the bakery's customers, a woman named Helen, was impressed by the cookies Grace made. "These are better than anything I've had in the city," she said. "Have you ever thought of starting your own small business?" Grace laughed. "With what money?" But Helen believed in her. She helped Grace apply for a women's small business grant. Grace was hesitant, but she applied. Weeks passed. Then one day, a letter came. Approved. With the grant and the help of her community, Grace started a small home-based bakery called Graceful Bites. The name wasn't her idea. It was Sophie's. Her business grew slowly but steadily. Her cookies, cakes, and warm breads became well-loved across town. She taught herself online how to manage orders, market on social media, and create simple designs. What she lacked in resources, she made up for in determination and heart. More importantly, she hired 2 other women, both widows, who had lost hope like she once had. Together, they didn't just bake goods. They baked stories, laughter, and a second chance at life. One day, at a local community event, Grace was invited to speak. She was nervous. She had never stood on a stage before. But when she saw her children in the front row, Liam beaming with pride, Sophie waving wildly, and Ella clapping with both hands, she took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. "I'm not here because I never faced pain. I'm here because I refuse to let pain be the end of my story. Life didn't give me what I planned. It gave me what I needed to grow. I learned that happiness is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. She looked at her children. I smile not because everything is perfect, but because I choose to believe that something good is always coming, and I teach my children that too. The room stood in applause, not because Grace had said something profound, but because she had lived it. Years later, Liam became a teacher. Sophie studied art and opened a small gallery. Ella grew up saying, "My mama taught me that every day is a gift, no matter how messy it looks." Grace grew older, but she never stopped smiling. Her bakery became a symbol of resilience. Women came to her not just for work, but for advice, for comfort, for hope. And whenever someone asked her how she did it, she would simply say, "Try to be happy in every situation, not because life is always good, but because there's always something to be grateful for, even if it's just the strength to keep going." Moral: life may not always go as planned, but happiness is a choice. Even in the darkest moments, finding a reason to smile can be the beginning of a brighter tomorrow. Let Grace's story remind us all. Strength isn't about having a perfect life. It's about choosing joy even in imperfection.